Okay, cool. Let's kick off then. We've got producer Pyle here in today because producer John is off doing God knows what. And we're at episode 31 of the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. Blah, 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 blah. How you going, man?
Morning, John. How you going, mate?
I'm having a great day. There's some news about the Who Cares Cup.
Yeah, the Who Cares Cup
But
continues.
before we kick off, last day for Elite Bet being preferred bookmaker for the month of November. So don't forget, all bookmakers claim to offer service of some description, but at Elite Bet they generally pride themselves on offering exceptional personal service that is not found in the bookmaking industry. An Australian-owned business where old-fashioned customer service really matters. Bet with your head, not over it. Sign up to Elite Bet now by going to the smartb.com.au and clicking on the Elite Bet logo. So yeah, that's good to go through the Who Cares Cup. It's the greatest and best name ever. You invented it, and I've been running with it since.
Yeah, John, I know we don't care about it, but the Big Show, he came out with all guns blazing, John. Made an unbeaten 104 off just 48 balls. Sensational innings. Australia got chased down the target on the last ball of the innings. 5 for 225, chased down India's 3 for 222. In the words of Richie Beno, 222. That's now 2-1 to India. That's 3 games gone, 2 games still to go in the 5-game series, John.
Glenn Maxwell managed to keep the series alive of the Who Cares Cup and show that he also doesn't care because he's come home straight after the game. So six more players have jumped out and left. Maxwell, Marcus Stoinis, Josh Inglis, Sean Abbott flew home straight after the match.
There you go.
Steve Smith and Adam Zampa had already returned.
There you go, John. Yeah, incredibly, he belted 8 fours and 8 sixes in that innings, so just some remarkable hitting. A couple of records went with that Maxwell innings, John. That's 400s for him in 2020 internationals. That's the joint most by any batter in the format. He became the first batter to score a century in their 100th 2020 international match. The 47 balls he needed for his century, that's the joint fastest century by an Australian in a men's T20 international. And the 223, the target chase down by Australia, that's the highest run chase against India in 2020 international. So there you go. Just a few little statistics for the Who Cares Cup.
So my understanding now is actually Steve Smith stayed behind for those first opening games to show what he could do as an opening batsman. We were wondering what he was doing, and that was actually what it was. He wanted to show what he could do as an opening batsman in the 2020 format, and he just kind of showed he sucks a little bit as an opening batsman in the 2020 format.
I would have thought at the end of the 50 over World Cup, John, that's the ideal time for Steve Smith to go, okay, I'm going to hang them up in the limited overs formats, both the 50 overs and the 2020s. Time to hang it up and just continue playing Test cricket for Steve Smith.
I think he was looking for a big payday in the IPL auction or whatever. So,
but he'll still get that even if he. More talking about the internationals. If he were to retire from the 50 over and 20 over internationals, but of course he can still.
But that was it. So that's what I mean. He just stayed behind to do this, so he could get a big payday in the IPL to show he could be bought as an opening batsman.
But then again, I guess Australia, I would have thought Australia would look at that and go, well, we're not here to service Steve Smith's marketability as an IPL player.
I think it just speaks more to how pointless the
exactly. I guess they probably figured, well, let him do it because no one cares about this series.
I got the updated squad, the latest squad for the last 2 matches. Matthew Wade is the captain, Jason Berendorf, Tim David, Ben Dwarshels, Nathan Ellis, Chris Green, Aaron Hardy, Travis Head, Ben McDermott, Josh Philippe, Tanvi Sangha, Matt Short, and Kane Richardson. It just goes again to show that, who cares? And Mark Taylor and Marnus Labuschagne have now...
Mark Taylor said that the cricket schedule around the world is, quote, unfixable now. And it's hard to disagree. It's like what you were saying the other day, John. Until these TV stations can get more accurate data on how many people are actually watching these games. They're going to continue forking out the big money for these series. And while they're forking out big money for these series, well, the ICC are hardly, and BCCI, more to the point, are hardly going to stop staging these
I
series.
I actually was talking to a couple of people in India who told me they didn't watch. I was surprised.
Yeah, even they didn't watch.
Yeah,
John.
diehard cricket fans, and they're like, no, I don't care.
They seem to get big crowds at these games. Though.
Yeah, well, T20 is always,
yeah,
fourth highest attended ball sport or third in Australia, with their 5,000 new crowd averages. But yeah, it's just like cashing in, getting more and more and more matches in to sell more and more TV deals, and then nobody cares. The squad is like, now it's Tier 3 squad.
Yeah.
No offense to the squad members, they're all like Australian players and stuff.
Yeah, they're just not the top. It's not the top squad.
Yeah.
Marnus Labuschagne said it was, quote, astonishing and hard to fathom that this 2020 series would follow that World Cup. So
that reminds me.
The criticism just continues and continues of this series, John. We talked about it the other day. Just a clear cash grab series. This one. Just not thinking about the cricket body, the ICC and BCCI. They just don't think about context. They don't think about relevance. They don't think about quality over quantity. They just load the games in there and just
keep them going.
Just
keep them going all the time. Like, there's more and more games means more and more TV means more and more money in theory. It reminds me that Bangladesh New Zealand match has actually started 2 days ago.
Like you said, they need a month off. So just to be playing these games so quickly after the World Cup, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
and it takes away from, to a degree, it does take away from the significance of the big tournaments. The fact that you've got so many games in and around them, that should have just been allowed to sit there in the calendar.
Yeah.
I've said it before, John. I think that with these internationals, for the 50 over and 2020 internationals, there needs to just be, all right, the 50 over World Cup, that's it for ODIs. And now that the 2020 international cricket's in the Olympic Games, right, that's it for 2020 internationals. The Olympic gold medal, that's your event. There's so many other 2020s that go on with the franchises, IPL, Big Bash, etc., etc. You just don't need international 2020 cricket, and you don't need 50 over international cricket anymore outside the World Cup. That's one quick and easy way that would clear a lot of the schedule. But that's ideal world, John. It's just never going to happen with the money that's involved.
We have the summer of cricket starting from tomorrow, I guess. But the problem with having like a summer of cricket is it's always summer somewhere, basically. So they'll just always have summer somewhere, and then they'll just always have cricket somewhere, because obviously cricket can't be played in the rain, so they never they'll just be like, oh, well, it's summer in the northern hemisphere, let's go over there and have some matches. Yeah. And now it's summer in the southern hemisphere, let's go over there and have some matches.
Yeah. We are looking forward, though, John, to the Big Bash. Starts on December 7th. The Test series against Pakistan starts on December 14th. So, we are...
It's the greatest test team of our generation.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a bit of a stretch, that one. But
you've got current and former players heavily criticising the series being scheduled, and fans, commentators, like I said the other day, like I just heard it all week, and I've heard it again this morning, because every single discussion about it is exactly like what we're having. This is what happened. Also, my God, this is pointless. Why are we here? And so you would hope that someday they learn from it, but cricket never does, because you have the same criticisms every year, actually.
They just never seem to learn, John. It's just it's an ongoing problem. What's the solution here? That you mentioned that the greatest Test team of our generation. I'll just clear it up for anyone who didn't watch our last podcast. That's Richard Roxburgh, the great actor, the Mission Impossible 2 actor and Rake actor, on that Channel 7 promo for the Test summer, saying, "You got to watch it. This is the greatest Test team of our generation." It's not his line. He's just reading off a script, but this isn't the greatest Test team of our generation.
Even with that, like Australia versus Pakistan, you know, it's cool because we're going to have Test cricket on Australian soil, you know, as we have the summer of cricket. But with this current state of Pakistan cricket coming over to Australia after their, you know, well, they almost made the 4 in the World Cup, but it's not actually going to be the best games. You know?
And that's the problem, John, because the schedule's so packed now. That touring countries like a Pakistan, they can't get the lead-up games that they need to be competitive against Australia out here because, you know, well, the World Cup's just finished. I don't know what Pakistan are doing. If they're not resting now, they're probably playing in some other meaningless series leading up to the Australian summer. I'm sure they might play one lead-up game going into the summer here. But you need more than that if you're going to do well against Australia, John. Australia are so dominant on home turf.
Actually, they're resting.
Yeah, well, they're resting, yeah. So
maybe they'll do well.
That's the thing. They're not getting these warm-up games into the legs that they need to be competitive against Australia.
Oh, they're going to play warm-up game Prime Minister's 11 against Pakistan.
Yeah, is there only one warm-up game? Is there more
that's
than
it.
one? So one warm-up game, that's just not enough in Australia to be competitive against Australia. You need at least 3 or 4 warm-up games going into the first Test, John.
So that's actually part of their tour of Australia as well. They're going to play the Prime Minister's 11 on December 6th in Canberra.
Yeah.
That is a Test match as well, 6 starting December 6th, finishing December 9th. That doesn't sound right. Oh, yeah, it is, yep. 5 days.
Oh, so it's a 4-day warm-up game. I think it's just it's a warm-up game, yeah. So, one game's not enough to be competitive against Australia. You need 3 or 4 lead-ups. Lead-up games to have any chance of being competitive against Australia, especially a team like Pakistan who are not as strong as an India or an England. Even an India or an England would need, 3 or 4... Well, obviously England would. I mean, they're terrible. every time they come to Australia...
Well, they're a minnow team.
Every time they come to Australia, they're terrible. So they'd need 3 or 4 warm-up games. I mean, India have been the best performing side in Test series in Australia in recent memory. I think they've won their last 2 Test series out here. But the problem is we can't get India or England to come out every summer. We need these other countries to come out and be competitive out here. Even as South Africa, John, even they have struggled out here in Test series in recent times.
Should, I think maybe like New Zealand would have been a good one to do Australia and New Zealand.
I mean, the New Zealand lead-up's great, and then you go into an India or something like that. But India have clearly been the dominant team in Test series in Australia recently. They've done their homework ahead of that Australian series and prepared properly for it, but everyone else has just turned up out of obligation and just been dusted up big time by Australia out here, John, in Test series.
Yeah, come to Fortress Australia, Pakistan, and see what happens, bro. So anyway, moving right along.
Yes,
Pat Cummins is Post and Ghost. Pat Cummins, Post and Ghost.
Yeah, He's gave an interview to the ABC 7:30 report, John, and I don't know if it was the best idea, John, but anyway, he did cop some criticism because he came out bagging Cricket Australia's $40 million sponsorship with Alinta Energy. But then again, his critics have pointed out that he's been pictured flying first class and driving one of the world's highest polluting luxury vehicles, a Range Rover, at the same time, John. So these anti-left wokeists have come out critical of him. But he's doubled down, John. He says, he says, I'm fighting the good fight here and I'll stand by my beliefs. But John, we just want the Australian cricketer to play cricket and captain the Australian cricket team.
I know these guys, like all famous people, have platforms, but it doesn't mean you need to like use your platform to get involved in political conversations about what is left and what is right. You can, and also the people responsible with the Range Rover, you can get a hybrid electric Range Rover. So who knows what Range Rover he drives?
Yeah. Yeah, well, there you go. That's a good point.
But that's the thing with all of these political conversations. They'll always latch onto like a small piece of it to promote their argument, and you can't be a little bit of either. You just get pushed over to either side by both. So even though he's talking about the energy, so he talks about that you shouldn't be sponsored by energy. So right wing people will say, "Oh, look at this left wing snowflake." And then left-wing people will go, you're a hypocrite because you drive a Range Rover. Look at this right-wing nutbag. So there's no way to win. And my suggestion to everybody who's famous is just to stay out of it. Because you're just going to cop criticism no matter what from all. That's the internet. That's life. Like that's our modern society.
Especially when you're the Australian cricket captain. You're not a politician. That's the thing. He's the Australian cricket captain. He's not.
Just talk about cricket.
Yeah. That's his job is to. If you're getting him on for an interview, well, you chat about cricket, don't you? Yeah. He's the Australian cricket captain.
He can. I would wish that people like that spoke more to the plight of children's brain cancer funding.
Yeah, 100%.
That's stuff that nobody could criticise.
Yeah, that's right.
But they should stay out of. There's this list of, you read like how to function in social situations, and there's a list of topics to stay away from, and it's generally like religion, politics. Now there's new ones like you don't talk about exercise and health because everyone has their own. Everyone's an expert these days on exercise and diet and stuff, and it's just going to create an argument,
Yeah, so you can't even talk about that anymore.
No, there's so many things you just are banned now. But that's the kind of thing I feel like, because these guys are in the town square, basically. And it's because it's when I'm talking about that, like you stay away from the hard topics in a social situation. It's when you're at not with friends. It's when you're in an open social situation, like at a party where you might be talking to someone you don't really know, or casual acquaintances, or you're at like a event for dinner or whatever, and you stay away from these hard conversations that will promote arguments. Discuss it amongst your friends. And all famous people are the same. They should really stay away from these hard topics. In the Taylor Swift documentary that my daughter and my wife are watching, I walked through and threw up in my mouth a little to watch Tay-Tay talking about I feel like I have to do something. It's like, you know what? You don't. Even if you feel like you do, you don't. So that's why she got involved in the presidential election, because she felt like she had to do something to save the world from Donald Trump.
Like it's her job to save the world from Donald Trump.
Your job is to play music
to sing
lollipop
songs.
Yeah. But I do love Taylor Swift music. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about music and play music, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's the same as these guys.
Sorry, Taylor Swift. It's not your job to protect the world from Donald Trump as much as you might think it is.
It's actually Joe Biden's job.
Yes, it is Joe Biden. Funny that, isn't it? The guy who's probably going to be running against him at the next election. It's probably more his job than Taylor Swift's job, John.
Donald Trump's job to protect the world from Joe Biden. It's not Kid Rocks.
I do love how much Donald Trump comes up on our podcast.
What is that thing that he said, or something like one of his crazy supporters said that Donald Trump now gets talked about more than Jesus.
Yeah, it's true. Right?
I don't think we've had a Jesus discussion on this podcast.
Who would have thought 10 years ago that Donald Trump would get talked about more than Jesus?
So Pat Cummins, you are a woke lefty if you're talking about energy sponsorships, and you also are a right-wing nutbag if you're driving a Range Rover. So just zip your mouth and talk about cricket. You are a great captain despite early trepidation around the World Cup.
Yes, he did a great. We should point out he did a great job at the World Cup, and his captaincy in that final against India was meticulous.
Yeah.
So, well done on that, Pat. But maybe save the
just stay out of politics.
Save the political stuff for
Politicians.
Yeah, yeah, good idea.
Yeah. And so finishing up on cricket.
Yes.
The Shane Warne legacy is set to kick off next week.
Yeah. So John, his children Brooke, Summer, and Jackson have penned a heartbreaking letter as they launch a new initiative that they believe would have saved the late Spin King's life. As we know, John, the Aussie cricket icon, died aged 52 in March last year after suffering a heart attack while he was holidaying in Thailand. The Shane Warne legacy is set to kick off next week, John. It's to raise funds and awareness for a variety of charities. The first cab off the rank for the initiative is to make available 23,000 free 4-minute health tests by the end of the year.
Oh, that's
a
good.
test Warne's kids believe could have saved his life. Money for the foundation will be raised through the sale of Shane Warne legacy floppy and bucket hats. Yeah,
That's cool, man.
so it's good that it was obviously a tragic day last year, John.
It's only a year ago.
It was March last year, so we're getting close to 2 years ago now. But yeah, just a tragic event, wasn't it, John? I think we all remember where we were. I checked online the news websites. I was watching something on YouTube and until like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and just before I went to bed, just checked the news websites, and then all of a sudden you see that Shane Warne died. You just couldn't believe it. You just went into a state of shock. It was a real tragic day in Australian sport, and after that, John, I couldn't sleep after reading that. I just could not believe it.
One of the things about Shane Warne is actually, no matter what the news was, you could never believe it. Shane Warne's dating Liz Hurley. What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then, Shane Warne's died. What? No, he hasn't. So then, it was a matter of, waiting and just keep reading the news to see if it was actually confirmed true. And even when they were saying, this has been confirmed by his children, you were like, no, but let's wait and see. Let's wait and see, because it was just so unbelievable.
Yeah, there's only a few times in your life where you're genuinely shocked, John. I think that was, that was really one of them.
Steve Irwin was the other one for me.
Yeah,
that was
absolutely.
It was like, what? No.
That was a big one. But tragic news, wasn't it, John? But at least it seems like they're making the best out of a very sad situation there, and Shane Warne's legacy continues to live on.
You know who should have talked about that? Pat Cummins.
Yeah. Look, that'd be far more appropriate for Pat Cummins, wouldn't it? That subject, rather than bagging Cricket Australia's Alinta Energy sponsorship. But anyway,
that's all there is for cricket. But the Big Bash League does start in 2 weeks. As well, 1 week. 1 week.
1 week. The Big Bash. 2 weeks. We're going to
be doing a preview next week.
Yep, 2 weeks for the first test.
And Big Bash League is pretty hardcore. There's matches almost every day, so there'll be a lot to talk about every day.
That'll be good.
But thank God for Rugby League, because Rugby League exists, and Rugby League always gives us something to talk about. So Ponga has finally admitted that he did punch Mel Meninga's mum. That's why he wasn't picked. Was that the news?
Yeah. He said that he was asked if he was disappointed not being picked in the Australian squad. And he said he was disappointed, but he didn't have a go at Meninga. He said, "I wasn't disappointed at Mal. I was disappointed I didn't make it." He was quoted as telling Channel 9. I think he's being very... I mean, he has to say that, John, obviously, publicly, but
he wants to get picked later.
Yeah, of course he does. He's got to say that, but I think he's being very polite to Meninga there, John. I think he was hard done by, and I think Reece Walsh was hard done by as well with that Kangaroo squad. As we talked about, picking Tedesco was the wrong move. He was out of form all season, Tedesco. And it really came back to bite Australia, that complacency, getting hammered 30-0 in that Pacific Championships final.
Yeah, and my mate Paul's still going on about it in Facebook, by the way. He's still making posts, and I'm replying back just to be funny. The conversations are so typically internet, you don't even accept the fact that you got beat by 30-0. I'm like, yeah, we got beat by 30-0. I know we did.
Yeah.
And New Zealand is the greatest team. I keep asking him, what are you going to say next year? I've bookmarked the conversations, so next year I can bring them back up. There is some of the tests are firming for next year, actually. I thought there was going to be another Pacific Cup. That was what I originally read, but there's actually not.
Okay.
There is going to be a Australia-New Zealand some kind of series. Samoa is possibly going to England next year.
Right.
There's just some of them are firming, and we'll see what happens. But like what is any New Zealand when Queensland beat one of the things I always give it to Queensland, like when Queensland beat New South Wales in 2006 in the Origin, they didn't start going on about this is our legacy and we are now the best. They waited like another year.
Yeah, they waited maybe until the end of 2017 when they'd won 11 out of the 12 series.
When they'd won a few to show that they were actually the best, they waited till then. Whereas New Zealand's like, that's the first game they've won in like 5 years or whatever it was. Yes, Australia hasn't played much, but it was, as soon as New Zealand wins, and yes, it was a good win with 30-0, greatest ever loss to Australia. You got to cop that. The week before, they lost 36-18.
Yeah, and they didn't even make the final of the World Cup last year.
One of the things they keep bringing up is Charles Nickel-Klokstad is the best fullback in the world, when the best fullbacks in the world weren't actually playing.
Best fullbacks in the world were left out of the Australian team, the two best fullbacks.
And how he ran 299 metres in that final, which is a stunning performance. A week before, he ran 95.
But doesn't it highlight? And I know that Nickel-Klokstad, that's not the case, John. I mean, that's ridiculous. But doesn't that highlight how stupid it was of Mal Meninga to leave out Kalen Ponga and Reece Walsh?
The best fullback in the world.
Absolutely absurd. One of the most ridiculous decisions of the year in sport.
I went through the teams to see who in the New Zealand team I would rate as the best in the world, which I think maybe we can go through one time in the future with one of our controversial conversations. But there were only two players in the New Zealand team that I would rate as up there as possibly the best in the world, and it was Joey Manu, best centre in the world, not best player, best centre, and Jermaine Osako could be rated this year only, and we'll see what happens in the future, as the current best winger in the world, given the ridiculous amount of points that he has scored, both club and for his country.
Yep, top point scorer and try scorer in the NRL this season.
Yeah, and in the Pacific Championship.
Yes.
So you could go out on the limb and say those two, because the centres were for Australia. I can't even remember who they were, but Joey Manu is... I think Joey Manu also won a Golden Boot last year. Golden Boot nominations are in, and Payne Haas is the only Australian in there, by the way. And I think it's 3 out of the 4 nominations. I think it was 3 forwards, so maybe a forward will win the Golden Boot.
Right, yeah. Anyway. Ponga obviously trying to get that Queensland Origin jumper back off Reece Walsh. He was left out because of the concussion.
Yeah.
Concussion. He sort of pulled out, didn't he?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that'll be his first goal, be to try and get that back from Reece Walsh, and then after that, hopefully, looking at Australian selection in those tests you're talking about.
Putting on my prediction hat, I will say what's going to happen if Kalen Ponga doesn't get concussed in the early starts of the next year. He's going to be the best he's ever been, and so Reece Walsh will probably be pushed out to the wing, because there's no way you can't pick Reece Walsh as well. That's the thing. For Queensland, there's no way they can't. If Kalen Ponga is fit and firing and Reece Walsh is fit and firing, there's no way you can leave them both out.
That's right, John. Yeah, I think what happened was Slater made the hard call to pick Walsh over Ponga because of these constant concussions, but then Ponga eventually ruled himself out. That's sort of how it went.
Because he got like 2 concussions in 5 weeks or something like that opening this year. So, and he had some last year as well.
And he was one of their best players. Yeah. He was one of the best players for the Maroons in 2022 as well. So
it's one of those. It was actually one of those things where even though he's still super young, they were saying like maybe he should actually retire. That's how severe it was. So fair call.
You can't blame. You can't fault what Billy Slater. Anything Billy Slater's done as Queensland coach at this point in time. Yeah.
So
flawless performance by Slater as Queensland coach.
Ponga to be back next year. Speaking of Billy Slater and other Queenslanders, 30 stinking Queenslanders.
Yes.
Billy Slater and Jonathan Thurston are now eligible to become immortal.
Yeah, so John, those two have now been retired for 5 years. So they're now both eligible to become NRL immortals. That's obviously the highest honour for a former rugby league, or for a rugby league player, is to become an immortal. So, I'm just going to go through some of their stats, John, and then we'll have a talk about the Immortals concept a bit more broadly. So Jonathan Thurston, John, won 2 premierships, one with the Bulldogs in 2004 and one with the Cowboys in 2015. A 3-time Golden Boot Award winner in 2011, 2013 and 2015. A 4-time Dally M medal winner in 2005, 2007, 2014 and 2015, and the Clive Churchill medal winner in 2015. Billy Slater. Now, 4 premierships, but 2 really.
2 premierships.
2 that were stripped and 2 legitimate ones.
2 premierships.
Golden Boot Award winner in 2008, 2011 Dally M medal winner. 2-time Clive Churchill medal winner in 2009 and 2017. Now, this premierships issue, it's an interesting one, isn't it, John? Because at some point they're going to have to consider, they're probably starting to do it now, considering Slater for immortal status. But can you count those 2 premierships?
No.
Because you can't, because it was an illegal team. It was a cheating team. So those premierships can't count in his favour. He has to be viewed as a 2-time premiership winner, not a 4-time premiership winner.
They always put the stars next to him, and the star should be that this premiership doesn't exist. It's unfortunate for all of the players in the team, but it is just too bad. You cheated. Your club cheated. Your team cheated. If they had won, like you can go to the Olympics, right? And all of those players, Russian athletes that got done for steroids.
Yeah.
What happened there is their name is no longer in the record book, actually. They have been stripped of the gold, and it's been any medal, and it's been handed to the person down below them. And, I think I've mentioned it before, like Jordan Burroughs talks about it, like, it's meaningless in those Olympic sports because to get the medal later, because the whole idea of all those, the whole thing with all those Olympic sports is there's very little money in any of them, and you get money by being a medalist. So when they, strip the gold medal winner from 1992, and then in 2020 they stripped the gold medal from 1992 and hand it to the guy who won silver, then hand the silver to the guy who won bronze, and then hand the bronze to the guy who came fourth, is irrelevant. None of those athletes wanted it. Okay? And, they always when Parramatta got the Melbourne Premiership got stripped by Parramatta, and then some Parramatta people, they should hand us the Premiership. In some respects, I agreed with it, because if the entire Melbourne Storm team had have been steroid cheats in the Olympics, the medal would have gone to the person below them. So in some ways I agree with it. In others, I don't, simply because it's more of a team sport, and it was like a club-based issue rather than an individual game-based issue and stuff like that. But yeah, they don't exist. The premierships don't exist.
It's the same with Lance Armstrong and those 7 Tour de France wins. That he's now been wiped. He's been wiped from the record books. And so when we're going into this debate, Billy Slater needs to be regarded as a 2-time premiership winner, not a 4-time premiership winner. So 100%. Those 2 that he won in a team that was cheating the salary cap can't count here. And you could also make the argument, John, he's a 2-time Clive Churchill medal winner. He won one of them in 2009, which was one of the years where the premiership got stripped. So can you also make the argument that's a tricky one. Can you also argue that shouldn't be factored in as well, John? Because Melbourne may not have even made the grand final if they weren't cheating. Yeah. So if they may not have made the grand final because of their cheating, well then he doesn't play in the grand final. He doesn't have the opportunity to win that Clive Churchill medal.
And with a fullback especially, it's very rare for a back to have an individually brilliant performance in a winning team in rugby league. People in front of them have to lay the foundation, i.e. the forwards, especially a fullback. So the hooker has to pass well, the halfback 5/8, you have to get line breaks and offloads. The forwards have to run hard, gain meters, play the ball quickly, things like that. So if you want to get really deep into it, you could say that, without that team in front of him, he probably wouldn't have won a Clive Churchill medal.
Yeah, they may not even... The chances are they wouldn't have made the grand final even.
What is the requirements to become an immortal? Because I have a lot of issues with the immortals.
Well, yeah, I can go through that for you, John. So the concept of the Immortals was created and run by Rugby League Week magazine until 2017 when that magazine shut down, John. So then since 2018, the NRL took over the concept. So under the Rugby League Week reign of pre-2017, 8 Immortals were named. Clive Churchill in 1981, Bob Fulton in 1981, Reg Gasnier in 1981, Johnny Raper in 1981, and then Graham Langlands in 1999, Wally Lewis in 1999, Arthur Beetson in 2003, and Andrew Johns in 2012. When the NRL took over in 2018, because it now came under their jurisdiction and not the jurisdiction of a magazine, they decided to add 5 more Immortals retrospectively. So they added Dave Brown, Frank Burge, Mal Meninga, Daily Messenger, and Norm Proven. And now there's a total of 13 Immortals. Now the problem is, John, with this is that the more you add, the less significant it becomes, the less prestigious the honour of being an Immortal becomes. So now there's 13. It's only the number's only going to grow now. If we get to a situation where we've got 20, 30 Immortals, obviously it diminishes the honour, the more you have.
Yeah, it's, to be honest, okay, so yeah, like you just said, it's only going to grow. There's no way it can shrink, right? So if it was based on a ratio of Immortals to player amounts, number of players throughout history, it would make sense, okay? So I don't know how many players there's been throughout history, right? So just say there's been 10,000. I don't know, it's probably not that much, but just say it's been 10,000, 13 out of 10,000. You could say, like, all right, so to make it easier, like if there was only 113 of them, you could say, all right, we can always maintain that 13% of rugby league players are Immortals. So then it's like relevant and realistic that you would be adding Immortals as more players are added, because it is like the more players, the more better, right? But I think the adding of the 5 actually is the thing. Rather than having too many, it's just simply broke the whole system, because Andrew Johns was 2012, fair call. Andrew Johns is an Immortal, 100%.
Was that fair to say, John? In my opinion, best player in my lifetime.
Yeah,
you'd probably say the same.
For sure. Yeah. I don't care what you say about. People want to always compare Jonathan Thurston to Andrew Johns and so on, but just individually, Jonathan Thurston never ever did the 2005 State of Origin. And that 2005 State of Origin that Andrew Johns did individually was there were scatterings of that throughout the entire history of his career. And Jonathan Thurston never had one of those. Like, he individually was brilliant in many games, but not like the way Andrew Johns basically put the team on his back and carried it up the field, Yeah. But adding of Dave Brown, so with regards to the premierships, by the way, just as an aside, Frank Burge never won a premiership, so, that doesn't go into it. But adding Dave Brown, Frank Burge, Mal Meninga, Daly Messenger, and Norm Proven after Andrew Johns is, I think, what broke it. Because all of those players retired before Andrew Johns. So why weren't they already named?
Yeah, so that's the thing, John. When the NRL took over in 2018, maybe they should have just gone, right, well, Rugby League Week have named 8 to this point. We'll just sit on that. We'll just leave it for a moment. But they couldn't help themselves. They thought, oh, no, we've got to add more. We've got to add more. Now we're in control of it. And now they've sort of overdone it. Now there's 13 already. And, it seems like there's going to be more added, because we've had, obviously, Thurston and Slater now eligible. Cameron Smith will be eligible. I think he retired at the end of 2020. So this time at the end of 2025, he'll become eligible as well. This is the issue now, John. They've made 2, and as you said, adding the 5 in 2018, it didn't need to be done, John. They should have just backed Rugby League Week in. They should have just gone, all right, we're going to leave it as is, and we'll add more in the future, but we're leaving the 8 as is.
So, how do you say, so in 2012, how do you say, historically over the course of rugby league, these are the 8 people that we think are Immortals, right? And that's it. And then 6 years later, someone comes in and goes, oh, you missed some. It really, really broke the whole system by creating too many. I mean, like guys like Mal Meninga, Daly Messenger, and
they're all great players.
Yeah.
Well, the argument's not. They're all great players. Dave Brown, Frank Burge, Mal Meninga, Daly Messenger, Norm Proven, all icons of the game.
They have the Dalium
but
medal.
They weren't named as immortals by the magazine who founded the concept and were running the concept until 2017.
And they were played and retired before 2012 when Andrew Johns was inducted.
Yeah.
So
if they were going to be added, they should have been added before that
exactly,
point, and they were not.
So what it should be, to my mind, is you establish a percent. Like I actually heard this morning on a podcast, one of the Johnny Yap's podcasts with Luke Pizzulli. He's a MMA coach in Australia. He started CFC. That's the biggest MMA. It's not around anymore. It was previously the biggest MMA organisation in Australia. Okay. So he got this great quote from a philosopher that was like, the basic gist of it was basically like, for every 100 warriors, there's one legend. Okay? It was a much longer quote and stuff, but that was the basic gist of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, you can say like 1% of rugby league players are immortals. You could say that, okay? Something like that. I'm not saying 1%, I'm saying they could come up with this formula. That's a more realistic formula than just saying after 5 years you're eligible and we can just add 5 more whenever we want and stuff. We can go like, there's been 1,000 players and so 10 of them are immortals, okay? And then when we have another 1,000, then we have when we have another 100, we have the possibility for another one. And that doesn't take away from the thing because you're maintaining this ratio. And I'm not saying they should go like, we've added another 100, we need to add another one. Because in that other 100, you can only add immortals after the last one, that have played after the last one, so...
Yeah, so you add Andrew Johns in 2012. After that, you're only looking at players who are playing after 2012.
And if there is no one...
eligible after
if there is no one in that 1% after Andrew Johns, then there is no one, Well, like, with a percentage or ratio, I'm saying there should be a maximum, not minimum requirement. There's not always 1% of the Warriors are immortals, or are legends, but... you come along to a point and go, we happen to have in our lifetime, like Andrew Johns, so that was the end of that era, okay, Andrew Johns. Then there was this new era, yes, some of them played together or at the same time, but new era of Jonathan Thurston, Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Darren Lockyer, all at the same time, okay? And in theory... At that time,
Greg Inglis,
so in theory, at that time, so out of all of them these ones, I would say those 4 are the ones that I would say are like immortal level. Those are the ones that are, Cooper Cronk, absolutely amazing. Greg, there's Hall of Fame as well, which is a lower level.
Yeah.
Cooper Cronk and Greg Inglis to me are more Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Thurston, Billy Slater, Darren Lockyer, Cameron Smith are like potential future immortals. And they all retired at different times, right? So, to my mind, the next one should be Darren Lockyer because he retired before the other 3. He finished. He did, yeah.
That's the thing. So, Lockyer retired at the end of 2011, so he would have become eligible in 2016.
Yes.
So
he should be the next one. But that doesn't mean we should just automatically add him.
Yeah, that's
we have to maintain that maximum ratio.
Yeah.
And the ratio isn't 1%, okay, for immortals. The ratio is probably 1% for Hall of Fame. The ratio of immortal is more like 0.1%. And so when you've had enough players play in through the game, then you can go, all right, guys, like I said, like I don't know the exact numbers, but say like 10 out of 1,000 players are immortals. Just say, okay? And then you go like, all right, guys, we've had 1,100 now, so we could potentially add another one. But there hasn't been another Andrew Johns yet, so we won't. We've had 12, we've had 1,300, we have 1,400, we have 50. You know what, Darren Lockyer is now eligible. We can add him in. We've maintained the maximum ratio, and he is realistically the next one after Andrew Johns. Then you go again, and you're like, all right, now all right. So go through. All right, whoever the next one to retire was Jonathan Thurston was next?
He retired at the end of 2018. Slater retired at the end of 2018. Cameron Smith retired at the end of 2020.
So your next ones, because no one else is going to come along in that. They're all retired. I mean, everyone's retired or they're all still playing, right? So no one else is going to come along. So then you go, our next ones are Billy Slater and Jonathan Thurston, because we know they're going to be immortals, but we have to maintain that ratio. We have to wait until there's been enough time and players to go, all right, now it's realistically that they are immortals. And then you can't add anyone between Darren Lockyer and those guys.
Can I just say, I don't get the thing where you need to wait 5 years after they retire to become eligible.
No, that's why I don't think there should be a waiting time.
They've retired. They're not. Their playing record is not changing in those 5 years. But why do they need to wait 5 years? Why can't you just add them as soon as they retire?
Yeah, and so they're circling back to that. The fact that they've just made it you have to wait 5 years is ridiculous.
What's that about?
Because that is what inspires this. Now we can add Mal Meninga even though he wasn't in there before. Because they can just say, let's look at everyone who has retired in more than 5 years ago, as opposed to saying, all right, guys, we've had 1,000 people and we have 0.1% of them are immortals. So really, what's 0.1% of 1,000? It's 10, right? Yeah, it's 10, right? 10. No, that's 1%. So it'd be 1. We had 1,000 players. We can have 1 immortal, right? And so you have to wait until that many, because yes, more people are playing every day. Every year, more first grade players come into first grade. But every year it's not the same amount, right? Every year one year it can be 100, the next year it can be 20, the next year, I don't know how many, again, I'm making up numbers, but it's never the same amount. When you take it off time, it's always the same amount, Every year, 1 year has passed.
Yeah.
So it's not really realistic. It actually that's what I think actually. So, two things: adding those 5 players after Andrew Johns broke the immortal system as it is, and the second thing that makes it not as good is by applying a time limit as opposed to a percentage or a ratio of players to possible. Again, you don't just add an immortal because you're at the ratio. It's Now we are at that ratio. It's possible to add one. Has there been anyone who meets that requirement? And, the reason I include Darren Lockyer is because, first of all, he changed the way fullbacks play, right? He changed the game as to how fullbacks play. Then he moved to 5'8" and changed the game as to how 5'8" play. And he was the first person to change the way fullbacks played since the previous immortal, like Graham Lenglands or whatever, Then he was the first player to change the way 5'8" play since Wally Lewis, the next immortal. And so and now everybody now is emulating until Billy Slater, which it's just, like I said, it's shocking that we got these guys all at the same time. But everybody up until Billy Slater was emulating Darren Lockyer's fullback play and trying to make the next Darren Lockyer at fullback. Then he moved to 5'8", and everyone is still trying to emulate the next Darren Lockyer. There hasn't, name one other 5'8" since Darren Lockyer that is of Darren Lockyer's standard. Whereas with fullback, you can name one other fullback, Billy Slater. There's been a lot of good 5'8".
Thurston, but
like Thurston will forever go down as a halfback, even though he played a lot of 5'8". And a lot of people were always calling for him to be 5'8". I just think that 5'8" was more like he was more of he spent more time at halfback, so I think he'll forever go down as half, and that's why he gets more of the. Few reasons for it, like because it's Queensland versus New South Wales, but also 7 versus 7. He gets more of the Andrew Johns versus Jonathan Thurston, who is better, as opposed to someone like nobody ever goes who was better, Darren Lockyer or Jonathan Thurston. Because they weren't like Jonathan Thurston isn't a 5'8". But yeah, like I said, there hasn't been another 5'8" since Darren Lockyer that I can think of.
Yeah,
there's been great ones.
I sort of think that. It's almost with an award or with an honour this prestigious, you can sort of almost have too much of a criteria and sort of be too overbearing with it. Like, so again, adding. I think they really jumped into adding those. Yeah, they needed to just take a breath and go. All right, this magazine, we're running it until 2017. They've opted not to include these 5 players. We're going to respect that. Yeah. And we'll take it from here.
I also don't think there should actually be any criteria.
That's the thing.
Other than changing the game.
Yeah, what is this 5 years? All right, you have the only criteria should be, is the player retired or not? All right, wait till they retire. Of course, you got to see what their whole career is before you make this sort of a decision. Once they retire, all right, they're eligible. Why do they need to wait 5 years is just ridiculous.
You're going to got to ask yourself, these people only have to ask themselves a few questions. Is he retired? Yep.
Yes.
Is there too many immortals compared to the amount of players? No? Okay, cool, then we can add an immortal. Is there too many immortals compared to the amount of players? No? Is there too many immortals compared to the amount of players? No? Okay, cool, then we can add an immortal. Is there too many immortals compared to the amount of players? No? is this a player that will go down in forever time as a player that changed the game for the better? Yes? Oh, there's you got an immortal. You know, like that's it. You don't need to go 5 years. How many premierships did they win? What was their behaviour like? When people wanted to strip Andrew Johns of his immortal ship, it was the dumbest thing ever in the history of rugby league. You know.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say though, John, is that Queensland team were the best Origin team of all time, winning 11 out of those 12. Yeah. And in my opinion, one of those players we've talked about, one of those Queensland players deserves inclusion in this at some point. You're sort of probably looking at Cameron Smith or Jonathan Thurston, I think, or Lockyer, like you said. I guess, again, the issue for Lockyer is he's been eligible since 2016 because he retired in 2011. That's the thing. So have they looked past Lockyer now? You'd have to think they have. And then you go, well, Thurston's now eligible. Cameron Smith will be eligible in a couple of years. So they're the two now that I think you're looking at.
But that's the thing. Like, the reason you think like you have to think like that is because they added those 5. When they added those 5 in 2018, Darren Lockyer was eligible at that time.
Yeah.
So now if they add him, they've broken it again.
Yeah. I would have been perfectly happy. I'm with you on Lockyer. I would have been perfectly happy if you make Lockyer the 9th immortal after John.
Yeah.
But don't go and add these other 5.
That's what I mean.
In 2018,
that really broke
Dave
it.
Brown and Frank Burge.
So that really broke it and kind of ruined it for Darren Lockyer.
Yeah.
Because if you were going to add 5, why didn't you add 6? Because Darren Lockyer was eligible.
So that's the thing. We're all... No one's doubting... Lockyer's would be... he would be certainly an appropriate choice with this award. But it does seem like now they've moved past him.
Yeah.
And now, I think the two... looking at those stats I read out, John, I think you got to put Thurston above Slater. You got to choose between one of them. You're going with Thurston above Slater. But then Cameron Smith comes into the equation in a couple of years, John, and then you're looking at, Thurston or Cameron Smith. To be honest, John, I think one of them's got to go in. Maybe that's a deeper debate we save for another day. But I think one of them's got to go in.
The negative connotations of Billy Slater's game actually excludes him from being an immortal if you want to maintain the sanctity of being an immortal.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, John. Thurston won 4 Dally M medals. Slater won 1. That's just one example of, how could you then put Slater in ahead of Thurston?
Yeah.
Just looking at that one, Thurston's player of the competition 4 times, Slater once.
And Thurston won, 4 golden boots?
Yeah, and to further to that, 3 golden boot awards for Thurston. Slater only won 1 golden boot. That's another one. So Thurston's got a combined 7 golden boot or Dally M awards.
Best player in the best league in the world and best player in the world.
Yeah, so a combined 7 of those awards for Thurston, a combined 2 for Slater. Yeah. I think if we're talking, we are just talking about these 2 because they're the 2 who are eligible now. Of these 2, you go with Thurston over Slater for sure. But I think you hold fire on Thurston. And you have that debate. Why we can't do it now, I have no idea, but these are the rules, the 5-year eligibility rule. You wait for Cameron Smith to be eligible, and I think one of them goes in, John. Yeah. Which one? We might save that debate for a couple of years when Smith's eligible.
But then after one goes in, that's it. All of them have missed out. That's the way it should be.
You're an immortal. This is not something that just gets handed out.
Really since 2018, I've had massive criticisms on the immortals thing, and they really broke it.
They rushed, as you said, John. They rushed that decision. They didn't think it through. That's the thing. They could have taken the time to think. There's plenty. You can add them whenever you want.
Yeah.
Why they just went? We're in charge now. 5 new ones. Anyway, that was a good chat, John.
Yeah, it was. I think one of the Immortals thing is it will always be a controversial thing because of that. Before that, it wasn't controversial. Before that, it was just widely accepted.
Well, before that, we went, there's 8 Immortals. And it had more prestige when there were 8 than it does now that there's 13, John.
Exactly. So, Michael Maguire watch continues.
Yeah, so I've got just a quick bit of news for you, John, before we go into what I put on the rundown there. So it seems like today, recording this Thursday morning, it seems like today he's going to be confirmed as a New South Wales State of Origin coach, John. He left his post as New Zealand coach last week to free himself up for the Blues. His coaching staff will also be named. It seems as though, John, it's only going to be a 1-year deal after Brad Fittler had to step down after losing back-to-back series. He coached the Kiwis since 2018. He'll remain an assistant coach at Canberra alongside Ricky Stewart there, John.
Okay.
In the past, Maguire coached South Sydney to their drought-breaking premiership in 2014, and he was head coach of the West Tigers until mid-2022. He was there for 3.5 seasons.
Yeah.
That's that bit of news, John. So the Kiwi boss has spoken out about the sacking of Maguire, and there's this hiding behind other people for these CEOs. I don't like it, John. He says... It's not just my view or the board's view. It's a strongly held view among the current player group and a number of former players that the two roles were incompatible, he said. That was a quote. If you're the CEO, you can't be hiding behind what former players and current players think, John. You're the boss. You got to make the decision and stand by the decision and own the decision.
So there were news reports saying the current players didn't want him to leave, and now suddenly the current players did want him to leave as well. It's... I really want them to these current players to come out and say it as well. They need to own their feedback that they're giving. You know, the CEO can say something like, "I took everyone's advice on board and I made a decision." Right? Some current players wanted to keep him, some didn't. Some former players wanted to keep him, some didn't. Some board members wanted to keep him, some didn't. I took everyone's advice and I made a decision. Okay, so I learned a long time ago in marketing, right? You take everyone's advice and then make your own decision, and that'll keep everyone happy. Your response to anybody who you didn't follow their advice was, "Oh yeah, we really loved your idea. We had to end up going in another direction because we got a bit more positive feedback in the other direction." Marketing fluff, right?
Yeah.
But I really like these some of the former players have said their things, but I really like these current players to say whether they publicly whether they wanted to. They're also hiding behind the CEO, because he's saying current players didn't want him here, but other news reports are saying current players did. Now that's going to cause a division in the Kiwi camp if they were to publicly say it. But it's still why are you hiding behind private meetings? You know, just come out and say, no, I wanted to keep, I don't know, Charles Nickel-Clockstad, he's the only player that pops into my head, right? So Charles Nickel-Clockstad should come out and go, no, I wanted to keep my edge. You know, that's it. Or, I thought it was a bad idea. But if the other people are going to use you as an excuse, so if the CEO has spoken to current players and some current players said, no, I want to keep him, name those players. If you're going to come out and say current players don't want to keep him, which ones? Who?
Yeah, well, I mean, he also went on to say, the New Zealand CEO, it's Greg Peters, the NZRL CEO. He also went on to say, I'm not prepared to name names, but I can assure you we've spoken to both ex and current players. And in the case of the current players, we put a lot of status on their view. To a man, they are consistent and agree with the position that Michael couldn't do both jobs. But then... it was Tony Kemp who said, he's a former Kiwi international, one of those former Kiwi internationals we were talking about. He's come out and said, well, of course the current crop want him, Maguire, to coach. Players are nurseries. They're never going to go against the coach. So he's sort of contradicted that view of the CEO there, John.
Again, who?
Yeah, we don't know,
Yeah. Who are these current players that all agreed to a man? All agreed to a man. All of those players that played in that 30-0 thrashing all agreed to a man that they don't think Michael Maguire should coach Origin. Did they really?
Yeah.
Are any of them now? And if they did all agree to a man, like the CEO says, so if any of them didn't, the fact that he said it and no one has come out and said, well, I didn't agree. Again, it's very cowardly.
It is, because, I mean... The ex-players and the current players, they have their view, whatever it is, but it's not their job to hire or fire the coach. That's the job of the NZRL CEO. That's his job. He owns that job. And he's got to make the call and own that call and not hide behind the ex-players and current players. They think whatever they want and they decide to speak publicly, or they don't decide to speak publicly, but the bottom line is it's not their job to decide whether the coach continues or not. It's the CEO's job, and he's got to own it, John.
Yeah, and he's come out and said this, that all the current players agreed to a man, right? So you have a list of the people in that 30-0 thrashing.
Yeah.
So how does Michael Maguire feel? Like, everyone, all the boys that I picked, nurtured, coached, and took this smashed Australia with, don't want me to coach?
It reminds you of that in the Cricket World Cup, John, when there was that controversial dismissal of the Sri Lankan batsman Angelo Matthews.
Yeah.
And Shakib said, look, it wasn't me. My teammates came up to me and said, you can appeal. No, you're the captain, mate.
You appealed.
Just like, no, you're the CEO, Greg Peters. It's your decision. Don't hide behind the current players and former players.
So just before we jump into our controversial conversation, I got this late last night. Jerome Luai watch.
Yeah.
So it's come out that he could possibly be swapped immediately to the Tigers for Clemmer and their young halfback, up-and-coming Lachlan Galvin, who's supposed to be a up-and-coming good player. Now, I read conflicting news reports about whether this was a Tigers idea or a Panthers idea as well. Like the articles I read said Panthers are looking for a mature forward leader, and some depth in their halfback position.
So was that the Panthers want Clement and Galvin? Is that right?
Yeah.
In exchange for
Luai immediately.
Well, to be fair to Penrith, Luai's under contract for next year. So if the Tigers want him to get out of the deal immediately, well, they're going to have to come to the table.
Yeah, Tigers are apparently happy to do the swap.
Okay.
So that's
if it works for both parties, then good luck to them.
Articles I read said Tigers suggested it and Panthers suggested it, but all the articles agreed that both are happy for the swap. So that could happen any second.
Well, if it works for both, then good luck to them, John. I think it'd be great to see Luai in a Tigers jersey in 2024. That'd be something for their fans to really look forward to.
That's that. We can move on to
our conversation.
And our NRL controversial conversation. I don't know, I'm trying to come up with a name for it. But you can watch the previous ones on the new playlist on YouTube, where we've cut these specific conversations.
That was good.
And so this week's one is, drumroll please, which NRL team do you hate the most, Dan?
Yes. I'll start off.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll go for. I can't go past our friends in the eastern suburbs, John, the Roosters. It sort of goes back to obviously I'm a Bulldog supporter, John, and when I was in high school, that was in sort of the early to mid 2000s. That was that I think it's fair to say they were the two best teams of the early 2000s era, John. And that was the big rivalry. That was the schoolyard rivalry that we always had banter about. You had that situation where the Roosters won the premiership in 2002 after the Bulldogs were stripped of all their points, being found to be cheating the salary cap. And then the Bulldogs sort of got their ultimate revenge in 2004. So the Bulldogs really had that last laugh of when I was sort of in high school there, John, and they had the last laugh. But unfortunately, since then, the Roosters have just completely obliterated the Bulldogs and won 3 premierships since then.
Stolen a bunch of their players.
And the Bulldogs haven't won anything since then. So I'm glad that happened when it did, John, when I was at school. And, so I can't go past the Roosters and, you mentioned stole the players. Then the Roosters went and just signed a bunch of Bulldogs players after the 2004 premiership. So they signed Willie Mason, they signed Mark O'Mealy, they signed Sonny Bill Williams, they signed Braithen Astor, they signed Nate Miles. So that's a lot that they picked out of the Bulldogs there, John. And of course, John, we always get the stories of the salary cap sombrero. And again, John, I put it out there a week or two ago. I would have thought, and I know a lot of it is jokes on the Matty Johns show from people like, Brian Fletcher just having a laugh on the Matty Johns show and Matty Johns. And look, fair enough, I get that there's a lot of humour in this, John. But, this sort of scuttlebutt annoyed Politis to come out and say that other clubs are jealous. So Politis clearly wasn't taking it as a joke. Yeah. But I just wonder, John, and I said it before, there's nothing stopping somebody, and I think it's fair to say that there's more scuttlebutt around them than any other team on this issue, John. So I'm just waiting for someone at that club to come out and say, look, and they're more than welcome, no one's stopping them, come out and say there's no truth to this. This has never happened. This is slander against our club. How dare you come out and accuse us of constantly cheating, even though sometimes you're half joking. That option continues to be available to them, John, and they continue to not take that option. But anyway,
one of the top 3 salary cap rauders in history, Brian Wardren, said if the NRL announced a thing where you could come out and admit you were rauding the salary cap and there'd be no penalty, all 16 clubs would do it. You know, he was on television basically saying that everyone would do it. He admitted 2 years before Melbourne got caught that they were rauding the salary cap on television.
But anyway, John, they're a very successful club. Maybe I'm a bit jealous of their success, but they're my most hated club.
Everybody hates the Roosters, and one of the things about the Roosters is their crowd attendances and memberships used to be so terrible, and they're actually growing with success. They had so many off-field dramas. It gives everyone something to talk about. They're not the Sydney Poosters because Roosters rhymes with poo. They're Sydney Poosters because Nate Miles pooped in a corridor. That's when the Poosters really came out. The following year, the 2 Toyota Cup guys were at the same hotel and thought it'd be funny to emulate Nate Miles as a joke. Now, the Nate Miles one was I felt so bad for the guy. I can't remember who it was, but they were going through it. It was Nate Miles had gastro. He was really sick. He happens to sleep naked. He'd taken some sleeping pills. He woke up needing to go to the toilet. He was in a strange place, didn't really know where he was. Walked through the door, the front door instead of the toilet door, accidentally. He sleeps naked all the time. Door closed behind him. He was naked. At that exact time, up the hall, our family was leaving to go on their further holiday. Came out and found a giant hulking man with diarrhea and gastro and happened to explode. But the next year, when the 2 NYC players thought it would be funny they just became the Poosters, and that's it's easy. They're an easy target not because of any they don't have any. These things happen. They actually do happen to the Roosters, you know. I can understand why everyone hates the Roosters. A bunch of my friends are Roosters fans. Actually, one of them, when he was younger, that I went to high school with, he was a Parramatta fan when I first met him, and then he changed to the Kiwis because he's half Kiwi, the New Zealand Warriors when he's half Kiwi. And then he started hanging out with this loud friend that we have, Big Chris, that's a massive Roosters fan. And my friend Seth said, after a few years, when he told me to change to the Roosters, he's you got to try hanging out with Chris and not be a Roosters fan. But I hang out with Chris for the past 25 years as well, man. I'm still a Dragons fan.
So are they your team as well, John?
The Dragons are my team. So.
Oh, no, sorry. Who's your most hated team?
No, they're not. See, Roosters were my easy target, but actually, and there's a long history there, Melbourne are my most hated team.
Right, okay.
So obviously it stems from 1999. Okay, the Jamie Ainscough penalty try.
Yeah.
Now, Dragons fans will often say the only reason Melbourne won in 1999 is because of the penalty try. It's true, but it's also a penalty try. Penalty try is awarded when there is a penalty that prevents the scoring of a try that would have scored the try. The try was fair, okay? And the Dragons were up and lost it. They basically pulled the 2023 Panthers, Broncos 24 years before Broncos did. Dragons were ahead and lost the match. So it stems from that. But one of the things I hate about Melbourne is they brought wrestling. It's well documented. They brought wrestling into rugby league. Okay. Now, people call it wrestling, and they go on about how it's wrestling because they're a little bit ignorant. What Melbourne actually did was they employed John Donoghue, who was one of the first 7 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts in Australia, as their wrestling coach. And throughout the years, we have seen chicken wings, crushes, I can't remember what, the hip drops, all of these.
All this has been introduced by them.
All come from Melbourne, and these names are given to them by commentators and rugby league things who may want to make them illegal. But when a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu person looks at it, a chicken wing is an Americana or a Kimura. You know, a hip drop is I don't know, they use a Japanese name, but it's a specific type of takedown The crusher tackle is like, you know, these things. We have names for them. I don't know the names of jiu-jitsu moves, by the way, just so you know. But they are there, and they stem from John Donahue. I'm not bagging John Donahue. He's an amazing coach, an amazing Brazilian jiu-jitsu
Yeah, it's not his fault. He's just doing his job.
Yeah, he was hired. And so you look at Melbourne, and they brought this wrestling into the game that made the ruck slow. They made it what people call boring because of all of this. And that has, to this day, created a situation in which the NRL is continually changing rules to make the game more exciting, which I think make the game more stupid, like the 6 again rule, which I've talked about before, where I've been to a game that was, you know, one team gets a roll on with 6 agains, they're up by 15 or 16 or whatever, and then the other team gets a few, and then they catch up, and then they're up by 2, and then the other team gets the roll on, and it goes like, they created a whole bunch of high-scoring games, which I know are highlight reels, but it takes away from the tactical element of the game, and it all stems from this wrestling.
Yeah, and further to that, John, obviously they're responsible for the biggest salary cap cheating that's been found in the history of the game. And they didn't show any real remorse for that.
No, I've got that as notes too.
Yeah, they doubled down on that. There was no apology.
Remember they did that ridiculous press conference?
Yeah, where they all walked out there and they made out like the world was against them when they just got found out for cheating.
They were cheating and they made it like everyone else's fault.
Yeah.
So and then they still claim the title. So this year they had some anniversary thing, and they had replica trophies, and they had the 2007, 2009 replica trophies there as if they still claim the titles. I don't expect them to give their premiership rings back, like the individual players, but as a club, like as a team, as an organisation, the fact that they still claim those titles and say, like, you know, we're however many time premiership winner, it just makes me hate them more.
Yeah.
And then they justified it, and Phil Gould was on the Footy Show trying to justify. He had a discussion with David Gallop, which I think was a stitch up on David Gallop, where they tried to justify, because they released all these names of players that they had let go. And they were releasing, like, saying all these juniors and stuff. And Phil Gould went through them all. Like, I think Dallas Johnson was one. Like, there was all these Melbourne junior rep players that were scattered throughout the league playing for other teams that had come through the Melbourne system and moved to other teams. And they tried to justify it by this. Like, we didn't cheat, we let go of all these people. But they also bought guys like Michael Crocker and Brett Finch. You know? Like, there was a list, also a laundry list of players that were rep players that they brought in.
Yeah, they bought more as well. It wasn't just the players that they brought through. I mean, there was no way that a team with, you know, Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk and Greg Inglis were ever going to be under the salary cap.
The fact that they only let go of Greg Inglis out of those big four was also a big slap in the face to the rest of the world too. But the last thing about Melbourne that I want to go into is actually speaks to the Dally M discussion before, the negative connotations of Billy Slater's games. Now, twice in history they have had to change rules specifically because of Billy Slater. Okay? One of the times was when he fly kicked David Klemmer in the face. Yeah. And David Klemmer got penalised. Because he touched a player in the air. Now, Billy Slater ran forward. David Klemmer stopped. You can watch the footage. It's horrifying. David Klemmer stopped. Billy Slater ran forward and leapt for the ball with a fly kick. He stuck his leg out. He struck David Klemmer. David Klemmer's standing still. And because of the rules at the time, David Klemmer got penalised. Right? It was when he was playing for the Bulldogs. The other time was leading with the knees to prevent tries. You're not allowed to do that anymore. And on multiple occasions, he slid in with his knees. You're not allowed to lead with the foot or knee anymore, which is good. Slid in with his knees on a player that had already scored a try, or he had no chance of stopping, and struck the player. Multiple occasions in the back, you know, in the side, in the head, everywhere, leading with his knees. And they had to change the rules to accommodate for this behaviour. And that just goes back to the whole team with their wrestling and chicken wings and hip drops and, you know, this kind of thing. Like, so this is why I hate the Melbourne Storm more than any other team, because they really, if you want to go into how an immortal changed the game, Melbourne Storm is, what's the opposite of an immortal, you know? They're the demons.
Immortal,
They're the mortals of the thing.
Immortal, Yeah, well, that's the thing about, you know, Billy Slater, John. I mean, he's He's obviously a very sharp brain in the game. We're seeing that now with his coaching of the Queensland Maroons. He's won 2 Origin Series out of 2. Very sharp mind in the game. As a player, I think him and Darren Lockyer would be the 2 best fullbacks that I saw play. But there was that, we have to be we're honest here, there was that aspect of his game that you didn't like. You know, the sliding in at players after they score tries, as you said, with the knees. As you mentioned, things like, you know, kicking Clemmer in the face or putting his boot in Clemmer's face. There was that really sort of ugly aspect of his game, you know, and that needs to be pointed out. And maybe look in the, and I don't think that Slater, you know, I don't think he should be an immortal. Not specifically for that reason, but you know, because I just don't think his record's good enough, and there's other players above him. But if you were to like really specifically consider him, well then, you know, maybe something like that would come into play. The fact that he had that nasty side to his game, and count against him when it comes to the crunch in a discussion like that.
In reality, massive parts of his game were dirty. And the definition of dirty. Yeah. Sliding with your knees in to prevent tries is dirty.
Yeah. And that's not good for the kids watching the game. Yeah. You know, that's not good for the game. That dirty side of the game is not good for the game.
Like that Origin chip and chase will forever go down as one of the greatest highlights in the history of the world, even though, you know, offside. But there's still like, they never highlight injuries, you know? They never make highlight reels of injuries, and things like the sliding knees injured people. They don't do highlight reels of times when Billy Slater slid into the back of players who were going for tries and then left them writhing on the ground in pain. Yeah. You know,
that's right.
But you can go find them if you look, and that's
unfortunate, isn't it? Because as I say, he's such a, and you hear his commentary is brilliant as well. He's a brilliant commentator. He's a brilliant coach. He was a brilliant player, but unfortunately, there's this side to him that we need to point out, and it does count against him when you look back at his whole career.
And that Billy Slater is just the what you could say worst of a bad bunch, because all of the Melbourne club and organisation is like that. They get Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in to train them in wrestling, and then he starts teaching them Americanas and body control with figure 4 locks that are like shoulder. You know, wrestlers, Jiu-Jitsu guys, submission grappling guys, pancration, all those kind of guys, like me, we all have rotator cuff issues, all of them. And rugby league players have had rotator cuff issues, like historically, but I've actually read a study about the increase in rotator cuff issues since the introduction of more wrestling into the game. Because it is a thing. I know so many jiu-jitsu guys who can't raise their arms above their head because a figure 4 lock, whether it's up is American, an Americana, and down is a Kimura. Yeah. A figure 4 lock, it tears your shoulder. Little bit every time. And they introduced that chicken wing tackle into the game, which is just a figure 4 lock. And it's Melbourne did it. And then when that got banned, they found another one. And then when that got banned, they found another one. They always find another one. They've always been my most hated team since 1999, obviously. But they just keep giving me more and more.
They've given you plenty more reasons, John, since then.
But I give it to the Roosters too.
Yes.
You know, there's now 17 teams in the NRL, and I hate 15 of them. The Dolphins haven't done anything to me yet.
Oh, you mean you like 15 of them?
No, I hate 15 of them. I like the Dragons.
Sorry.
I like the Dolphins. The Dolphins haven't done anything to me yet. I have my book of feuds, all right? That's our controversial conversation for the NRL. I'm going to get the creative people on thinking some label for that. Yes. Just quickly on the AFL. Yeah. I got a news story here about Gold Coast CEO Mark Evans, because we discussed the Gold Coast unfairness, has responded regarding the criticism of the draft. Right. This is another guy that should zip it, I think. So what he said was, this is a quote, I think we'd known for part of this year that there was going to be a good talent available to the Gold Coast Suns, and we were going to ruffle some feathers, Evans told SEN Sports Day with regards to the draft. Strong reaction probably indicates that Gold Coast did well in producing the talent in the first instance, but were then clever enough to be able to use the trade in the draft period to amass the points to be able to take those players. He continued, the second part of it was probably frustration from other clubs that they invest in their next generation academy. They don't get to secure those players unless they're outside the top 40. That's the exact frustration, CEO Mark Evans. Other teams have an unfair disadvantage because they don't get to get their own players back that they developed. Like, that's what it is.
It's all... To me, John, it's just all very confusing, isn't it? Yeah. It's just so many layers to
simple.
it. Yeah, it's not. It's anything but simple, John.
Yeah.
It's all very complicated, very complex, and you'd have to devote hours to understanding it, John.
Yeah, and it should be simple.
Yeah,
and the fact that certain teams get massive advantages, like the Gold Coast Suns, and then exploit them, and then try to justify it by saying, like, the other teams are just jealous that you get extra special treatment.
And remember, the Gold Coast Suns are a club that had heaps of help when they first came in 2011. And what do they have to show for it, John? No finals appearances in 12 years in the league. And there you go. So, as I've said before, John, it looks far worse when you help a team so much and they do nothing with the help. The AFL's been exposed on this with the Gold Coast Suns up to this point, and we've talked about this help that they've given North Melbourne as well, John. So time will tell. We'll be able to decide in 5 years from now whether it was all worth it, all the help they gave the North Melbourne Football Club this year. It's not going to look very good if North Melbourne are still down the bottom of the ladder in 5 years' time.
You know, we mentioned before, it's also not going to look good if they're at the top of the ladder, because then it's just going to be...
So either way, it's going to look bad.
Because if the system was fair, it would never look bad.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. It's either they'll still be down the bottom, and it will look bad because, the help hasn't done anything, or... they'll be up the top, in which case you go, you're only up the top because you got the help.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
So, on to combat sports. The most important thing happening this week is Subversion, which we are proud sponsors of it. You can still get some tickets. They are almost gone. You go to Mosh6 and search for Subversion Ascension. I'm just going to run through my 3 matches of the day. They're the obvious ones. There's 20 total fights. Some people had to pull out. Unfortunately for Curtis Martin, his opponent was injured, and he's always fun to watch. He's from Sydney West Martial Arts, and he did message me and ask if he still gets a rash guard, because we're giving every athlete a rash guard, and I told him he could have one. But the main event, Josh Saunders versus Bob Frias, I mentioned before. Saunders is now a 2-time ADCC Trials winner. He'll be going on to ADCC next year. ADCC is the pinnacle of submission grappling. Now, at the last ADCC, he fought BJJ legend Felipe Pena and actually got a takedown on Pena. Pena did end up winning, but we'll expect Saunders to go better this year. He's got more than 100 competition and super fight wins. Only 3 losses. I personally believe Saunders is the only truly professional BJJ athlete in Australia. Yeah. Everyone else wants to be professional, but because there's not much money in jiu-jitsu, their athlete training and stuff often comes second. So he's fighting Bob Frias. Bob Frias has been around for a long time. First time I saw Bob compete was, I think, 2018 at the Sydney Open. I asked one of my friends, think you beat this guy? And his response was, fuck no. He's smaller though. He has also won ADCC trials, and this year he was the runner-up to Isaac Michelle, who's expected to do well. He's one of the toughest and best BJJ guys in Australia, but he is about 20 kilos lighter. So you would have to expect Saunders to get that one. Yeah. It will be a cracker of a match because Bob is always exciting to watch. Co-main event is Ali El-Kir versus Taliesin Suarez. Ali's a great guy. I love the guy so much. He's the friendliest dude I've ever met in my life. He runs Sydney Wrestling Academy, and he's about to tie the record for the most Subversion appearances. He's got the biggest following in jiu-jitsu, not on social media or anything, but like in public.
Yeah, right.
So whenever he's on Subversion, half the crowd is there for Ali, and we're all cheering for him. Even even his opponent's fans are always also cheering for Ali. So even if you want the opponent to win, you're still happy with if Ali won because he is such a legend. And yeah, like the Sydney Wrestling Academy is a great gym to train. They let people come during the day for free to just train if you want and get some good rolls in.
Yeah, cool.
He's also coached by Lucas Kennard, who is one of the best BJJ guys in Australia, who rarely competes. But he did just do really well in his first competition in like forever at ADCC trials, and expect like Lucas to be in his corner. Talazan Suarez, multiple world champion. He won world championships at every single belt level. He's one of the best guys, not just in Australia, but in the world.
Yeah, right.
So you have to just on paper alone think that Talazan will get this.
Mm-hmm.
I want Ali to win. I hope Ali wins. It'll be awesome. I love Talazan Suarez as well, but I want Ali to win because, like I said, Ali's the greatest guy in jiu-jitsu. But I think if anyone can beat Talazan, that's a smoky, like not a favourite. You know, like if there were odds on jiu-jitsu, Talazan would be like the fucking $1.2 favourite, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not disparaging Ali. Ali's great, but I think if anyone with that kind of if there's one person in Australia with that kind of odds-on favourite that could beat Talazan, it's Ali. I've rolled with Ali many times, and he makes me feel like he's under 66 kilos, and he makes me feel like I'm a baby. And the last one is Nikki versus Fran. So Nikki Lloyd Griffith, she's a previous ADCC trials winner. She competed in ADCC last time. She went up against the number 1 seed, Gabby Garcia, who's like, well, if you go check out Gabby Garcia on the internet, she looks like she's like 100 kilos. She's massive. She's all jacked and muscly and stuff, and unfortunately lost. But she has competed at all the highest levels around the world in BJJ and won many competitions. And
Yep.
she's going against Fran, who is one of the nicest people in BJJ in the world. She made a late call-up on Subversion 2 Subversions ago when she was a fresh black belt against an established black belt, and you know, Fran's nicest person you'll ever meet in the world, and then she just turned into a werewolf. Absolutely dominated her last match, so this will be her second appearance as a black belt. In theory, Nikki should get it just because she's got more competition wins.
Yeah.
There's also some great matches on the early wins. The trials, what are they called? The qualifiers were last 2 weeks ago. There were some good people appearing on there. My friend Sergio is opening the prelim card. Sergio is, I've heard him described as the perfect specimen of what a human would be if he was genetically engineered. So, it'll be an awesome night. I really strongly suggest everyone gets out there if you just love great shows. The guys at Subversion, Matt and George, do an awesome job, right, making the absolute best combat sports show in Australia. So yeah, that's my pick. Saunders, Talazan, I'm sorry, Ali. But definitely you can win, Ali, and we'll all be cheering for you. And Nikki should get it. Sorry, Fran.
That's all right. Cool.
Yeah, so that's combat sports. Nothing else much happening. The next big combat thing is that 17th of December card. There are some cards in the UFC on before them, but nobody cares. Who cares cups? It's one of my favourite thing. On to other sports, and we've got some tennis news.
Actually, there is some combat sports news that I've added in there, John.
Yeah. Dan brought it.
Yeah. Conor McGregor is being investigated by Irish police for allegedly inciting hate around Dublin riots after UFC star blasted his country's government on social media, John. So there you go. Irish police are said to be looking into his social media posts amid these Dublin riots. Very nasty what's going on in Dublin at the moment, John.
Yeah.
There's a lockdown there in Dublin as the violence rages. It's very sad to hear that this is happening in Dublin, John. I've been there a couple of times. I've got friends there. It's a really nice place. This is very nasty.
All over the stabbing of some children.
A knife attack that led to 3 children and 1 woman being stabbed. It's seen mass protests break out on the streets in the last one.
So Conor McGregor is notorious for making ridiculous social media posts and quickly deleting them. So if they're going to look into his social media posts, they've probably all been deleted. But he's not a nice person.
So what, he puts it out there and then he deletes it?
Yeah, deletes it soon after. Not a nice person. He's like does racist tweets, sexist tweets, lots of bigoted kind of stuff. He's a character in MMA and the UFC and combat sports and basically in the world. Like I've spoken about before, he's the only current combat sports person that transcends the sport. But
yeah, and John, in a post, he said, "This is not Ireland's future. If they do not act soon with their plan of action to ensure Ireland's safety, I will." Who does he think he is? Does he think he's in charge of the country, in charge of law enforcement in the country?
Yeah.
Just because he's a UFC star?
He does, because he's Conor McGregor. So he's super popular in Ireland.
How delusional is he, John?
He's super popular in Ireland. They've been trying to get him to get into politics for years, actually, and they think he could possibly win. But he's the one guy that you don't want in charge.
John, those scenes in Dublin, it's just extraordinary. Windows smashed, police cars set on fire and looting, as many as 500 thugs gathering in far-right demonstrations. After unsubstantiated online rumours that the person behind the stabbing was a foreign national. This is just not good. This is very unsavoury, John.
That was one of Conor McGregor's tweets as well, furthering that theory that he deleted, was all about how, it's all caused by immigration.
And he's called for change and a plan of action as if it's up to him, John.
He thinks he's in charge. He's Conor McGregor, and he thinks he's in charge.
If they do not act soon to ensure Ireland's safety, I will. It's just the delusion in that line, John.
When you see him act like this and say things like that in the UFC, it's funny. But again, it just goes back to Pat Cummins, just you don't need to talk about politics, mate.
Yeah, and obviously this is a lot when we're not comparing this to Pat Cummins. I mean, Pat Cummins is not saying that he's going to take over Australia's law enforcement.
Conor McGregor needs to just zip it and talk about MMA,
Yeah.
I always find his tweets that people make fun of anyway, really insightful into fighting as well. He pointed out that Khabib Nurmagomedov fought flat-footed in striking, which is bad. You should be on the balls of your feet and stuff like that to be able to move. And once Conor McGregor had gotten the distance right, that's like I've talked about before, is the only person who's ever won a round against Khabib. And it was all based on striking. So he's the same kind of guy. It's great. Give us your insights. Don't talk about how you're going to take over Ireland and kick every immigrant out or whatever the hell it was that he said. He said something weird, and then deleted it. And then, just inciting violence.
Yeah, he said there will be change in Ireland. Mark my words, the change needed. In the last month, innocent children stabbed leaving school. Aisling Murphy murdered. 2 Sligo men decapitated. Yeah, it's just sad to see this happening in Ireland, John. It's surprising to see, and it's very sad to see.
It's terrible. And Conor McGregor should
it's not your area, mate. Stick to fight sports.
Yeah, exactly. Doofus. He can sue me for calling me a doofus, but he wouldn't. He'd definitely bash me. And that's what he should do, bash people. But anyway, we're still on about the Davis Cup because it is, like I said, Leighton Hewitt should take over. Yeah. Everything coming out of Leighton Hewitt's mouth right now is exactly about tennis.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right.
That's the difference between Leighton Hewitt, Pat Cummins and Conor McGregor, John. Leighton Hewitt stays in his lane. He sticks to the tennis. Pat Cummins and Conor McGregor could learn a thing or two from him.
And he's right.
Again, not that I'm comparing Conor McGregor to Pat Cummins. No. Let me make that clear, but it's the theme we're talking about. Yeah,
exactly. Leighton Hewitt's right. Everything that he says, people should pay attention to.
Yeah, so Leighton Hewitt, his latest criticism of the Davis Cup is he's not happy with that surface they use there, John. It's that indoor hard court, this generic surface that gets used all the time. And it's going to be used again next year as well, this indoor hard court, John. So gone with the days where, Australia would have a tie in Australia and they'd decide to play it on grass, or Spain and Rafael Nadal would play a Davis Cup tie in Spain and play on the red clay. Now it's just it's very generic now, the Davis Cup. One location at the end of the year, the same surface every year. It's just very sad to see what's happened to the Davis Cup.
John, they need to fix it before it's too late.
Yeah.
It was part of the tactics of the Davis Cup as well. So, like, Davis Cup used to be, and it wasn't so long ago. That's the thing. Like, only a few years ago. It used to be this massive event, country versus country, where countries would tactically do things, pick specific players for tactical reasons, pick specific courts for tactical reasons, have home and away games, best of 5 sets.
Best of 5 sets, yeah.
Yeah, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And now it's...
Yeah, Leighton's called for the home and away ties to be restored before the final, obviously, John. This was his quote. He says, "We are playing on a surface that I'm really sick of playing on, to be honest. That's not what Davis Cup is about. It's playing on clay, grass and outdoor elements." Yeah. That's the other thing, the outdoor rather than indoor. It's obviously pretty frustrating, he said. "I think that we don't get all the different surfaces and conditions throughout the Davis Cup anymore, and especially in the big matches as well."
Yeah,
Makes a good point.
Yeah. So you got to listen to him. He's right. I really wish they would. It's not too late. They could start now, but if they go another year, it could prove to be too late. And I reckon someone should approach Leighton Hewitt and say, "You need to take over the Davis Cup." And I know the majority of what he's going to do is he's going to revert it back to how it was.
And we need to do that, and we need to come up with some way of getting the best players to all play in it.
Then he will grow it. That's the thing. Revert it to how it was, with some small changes probably, and then grow it.
Yeah.
He's the best man for the job. You got my vote, Leighton.
Yeah, he's the most passionate person in the world on Davis Cup.
Yeah, and he knows all the tennis players, so he could get them there anyway. I agree with him, and I hope they fix the Davis Cup because it was one of my favourite things on the tennis calendar. But now I didn't even watch anything because I don't care.
Yeah, well,
it's become the Who Cares Cup.
You're not the only one, John.
Yeah. Other sports news, Shervo.
Yeah, so Matt Shervington's going to be on home and away now, John. There you go, if you can believe that. So Shervington held the Australian 100 metre national sprint title from 1998 until 2002. He's the third fastest Australian sprinter of all time. He reached the 100 metre semi-finals in the Sydney 2000 Olympics, finishing 5th. And now he's going to be on home and away, John. There you go.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, he already hosts Sunrise and he's branching out to home and away.
Is he an actor?
There you go.
Well, you don't really need to be that much of an actor to be on home and away, surely. You just have to be beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good luck. I hope he goes well on the show, John. Something different.
Oh, that's bizarre. On to our social media comments brought to you by social media. So there was a YouTube comment. So India's the snippet about India being poor losers. We got a comment from Peter Walk 4271 who said, "It's still your shout, Ramo."
Yes.
So you owe your friend a beer?
Yeah, that's I do know Peter Walk, John. He's stitched me up there. So it was actually funny, about 6 or 7 years ago, it was actually on NRL Grand Final Day. It was the year Cronulla beat Melbourne at the 2016 Grand Final Day, where, I bought him a whole bunch of beers at the start of the day, and he said, I'll get them back later, I'll fix you up later. And then I actually, after having had a few beers, of all things, John, I actually got called into work immediately, because it was Grand Final Day and it was a big, it was a big deal. Obviously working at Fox there, and I had to get in there. They needed cover for somebody who'd pulled out sick, and so after these beers I'd then have to go into work in that state, John, and I got him a bunch of beers and he hasn't got them back. So that's where he says, "Still your shout, Ramo."
Peter Walk.
Get us a beer, Pete.
Fix him up, bro.
I haven't seen him for a while, but yeah, he does. He does owe me a few
you can Jimmy brings for other people, right?
Yeah, please do.
Send him a case, bro. Come on. He got rooted out of watching the Sharks win the grand final. Who were they against?
Melbourne. They beat
Melbourne. Fortunately win again. Yeah, I've got a Sharks jersey just because of that.
Had to go in after a number of beers. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, John. That's not a nice feeling, that one.
No. Well, I've been at work in my youth after going out all Sunday night and going straight from the pubs to the things and getting sent home because, like, I'm sending you home drunk, was what my boss said. Oh, I agree. But yeah, never been called into work after a few beers. But Peter, we're gonna post this and we're gonna tag you. Peter, Yeah, Ramos and beers.
Yeah, thanks for commenting though, Peter.
Yeah. I'm sure
Thank
he
you.
just popped up on his shorts feed and went, "Wait a second."
Yeah, what's this?
So just our housekeeping, is that? Yeah, that's the housekeeping
that's
to go.
about it,
So,
yeah.
as Subversion is on Saturday, you can enter our Subversion competition to win tickets to the first event in 2024. So head along to Subversion this time, and then I'm sure you'll definitely want to enter the competition. Just sign up and tick Subversion as the how did you hear about us, and you can win 2 tickets to Subversion in 2024. The corporate box competition is still going. It will go until February sometime or January sometime. I can't remember. Check out the website to find out the exact date. You and up to 17 mates get to pick a fixture for the NRL at Allianz or Accor, BBL at the SCG, or NBL Kudos Bank. Sent this to some of my friends and said, you guys should enter this, and one of them replied, I don't have 17 friends. Like I said to him, if you got 17 free tickets in a corporate box, you have 17 friends.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah, 17 friends will find you, man.
You'll have no trouble.
And so I can't win, I'm super sad. Club Prairie Fire is about to kick off again for the next season, so listen to that. We'll determine on the 4th if we're continuing that partnership, but up until then, I'm going to keep promoting them. It's a great podcast. And don't forget to follow the one more podcast. I actually was invited on the Johnny Yaps podcast, which will be coming out soon.
Yeah, nice.
Episode coming out soon. I talked at length about SmartB if you're interested in development of SmartB. And then follow SmartB app on all of the social medias, basically all of them. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Sign up on the website. We're sending tips of the day if you're into gambling. Gamble responsibly, bet with your head not over it. You can get all of your information on Rugby League, AFL, and all of the sports we talk about. Fixtures, results, everything. Cool. See you all on Monday for our next controversial conversation. I've got to come up with a name for it.
The name for our NRL series of discussions.
I don't come up with names, I just accept them. All right, man. See you on Monday.
Thanks, John. See you Monday, mate.